Welcome to the Reel to Reel podcast, where the stories behind the board go on record. I'm your host, Bruce Hensal, and we're here to give you an insider's look at the music industry. I'm joined by my co-hosts from the Melrose audio team, Chase Steele, and this month's guest, Jeff Nolan and Richard Bowden. We're in several separate locations, including the audio studio at the Melrose Center, the Orlando Public Library. Please welcome Jeff Nolan. Morning, Jeff.
Hey, Bruce. Hey, everybody. Look at us. We live in the future. Look at all this tech we're using. Amazing.
It is. And, we started this series at the library live, and March 2020 hit us, and we've had to scatter.
Yeah, tell me about it.
But it's been an interesting couple of years, and we're getting on with it. Jeff, why don't you give us a little background of yourself? I know my acquaintance through you has been through Facebook and a lot of mutual musician friends here in Orlando. So,
well, I'm a big nerd who has somehow carved a bit of a career out in the world of rock and roll, which is kind of a Christmas miracle, I suppose. But I spent much of my life as a professional guitar player, touring and making records all through the 90s and into the early 2000s, and still do that. It just doesn't pay the mortgage the way it used to. But I was with Scott Weiland. I was with the Screaming Trees. I had a band called I Love You in the early 90s. That was a sort of an also ran group on Geffen back when everybody was in the early 90s, when they were killing themselves to sign every band that, seemed like they might have been from Seattle. I kind of got in on the coattails of that, and did a lot of studio work, lived in Los Angeles for a long time. And, then I morphed into the music and memorabilia historian for Hard Rock International, and being sort of the face of the brand for for the museum end of what they do, the actual pieces. Lots of media, lots of storytelling, lots of fun. And now I have struck out on my own as an independent sort of music and marketing consultant, but hard rock is my main client to such a degree, almost to the exclusion of others. And I still play all the time. I played with Kaylee Baker, played with the legendary JCs. I have my own trio, the Ludes. I play with the Big Jeff Special, Jeff Schumart and his group, with Nadeem Khan and that whole amazing crew of Orlando stalwarts. And recently have been doing much like we're doing now with the kind of, everybody's in a different part of the world. I've been working with Dave Aberzees, who was the longtime drummer for Pearl Jam. And we've been doing some tracks together, have some interesting people playing with us. Joanna Connor's been on some tracks, Bernard Fowler, that's been a lot of fun and really kind of interesting to live in that sort of postmodern version of being in a band.
Very, very interesting. Now, I've seen quite a few of your hard rock video interviews. Is there a YouTube channel or a centralized place that those are gathered?
Hard rock, like when I started doing the video stuff, it was really on a whim for them. And it was originally a live thing that I just did with an iPhone on Facebook Live a few years back. And so a lot of that stuff lives on Hard Rock's Facebook channel. And a good deal of it on on Hard Rock's YouTube channel as well. Particularly the ones that have a lot of attention, like the one I did with John 5, the interview I did with Ringo, things like that, that have a heck of a lot of views are on their YouTube channel as well. I have my own YouTube channel that I've linked some of those things to. It's just the Jeff Nolan or Jeff Nolan. I don't even remember. I can't keep up. I'm old. I don't know what the kids do with the tick flops and the flip talk and the.
That's funny. Well, Chase, you got any questions for Jeff?
Yeah, definitely. Well, I was, looking into your history working with the hard rock, and you know, to say it'd be like fascinating to, have all the knowledge and experience that you do, getting the chance to actually focus on being able to, just study that type of history. I guess a question that I was really thinking about is, maybe in your opinion, what is something that is most overlooked, or something that's just undervalued in terms of its contribution to like rock history?
Well, I'll tell you, with Hard Rock's collection, that was something that jumped out at me. That's a really good question, Chase. That jumped out at me a lot. And whenever people would ask me, like, "What's your favorite piece?" It would always be something that was more like what you're talking about, as opposed to the obvious. Jimi Hendrix's Flying V that he played at the Isle of Wight Festival. Obviously, that's awesome, but there are some treasures in that collection that are just incredible. And one of my favorite examples would be Graham Parsons' handwritten lyric journal. And it's a leather-bound lyric journal that I was in the warehouse one day years ago, and I just pulled this leather-bound book. I'm like, what the heck is this? And as I'm reading it, it's dawning on me, these are lyrics from like Flying Burrito Brothers songs. And then it all just sort of hit me. It's like, oh my God, this is Graham Parsons' personal handwritten lyric journal. And as I'm thumbing through it, I come to 3 pages of Wild Horses lyrics. And, there's always been that sort of kind of mythology in rock history of, did the Stones really write Wild Horses, or did Graham Parsons? And if you were going to make a case in court for it, this lyric journal would be Exhibit A, because, why would Graham write it 3 times? And there's lines crossed out and different chords written on top. It's like, it's the type of thing that someone who is actively writing a song does, not someone who's just jotting lyrics down. An amazing piece of history that we've gotten a lot of traction with. Another one that I think is really worth seeing, it's actually here in Orlando on the wall in the cafe. And people walk by it every single day, never give it a second glance. There's a display that has all of the contents of a wallet. And it's the wallet itself, and just a ton of like business cards and scraps of paper and things of this nature. And what it is it was Tommy Allsup's wallet. And Tommy was Buddy Holly's Oklahoma guitarist. He passed away actually not that long ago. Was an Oklahoma guitarist who played in Buddy's band on that final tour, on the Winter Dance Party tour, the Plane Crash tour. And he very famously lost a coin toss with Richie Valens for the last seat on the airplane. Well, Tommy had a letter or a check or something that was sent general delivery to the post office in Fargo, where they were headed. And he asked Buddy to pick it up. And Buddy was actually angry with Tommy for giving up the seat on the airplane. And Tommy's like, the kid, let the kid go. And he said, hey, will you pick this letter up for me, Buddy? Yeah, sure. Give me some ID. And, they're standing out it's cold, it's February, it's night, it's Iowa. He's thumbing through his wallet trying to find his ID, and Buddy gets impatient, goes, just give me the whole wallet. Takes his entire wallet, puts it in his pocket, gets on the plane, flies off into infamy. Well, of course, the plane crashes, and Tommy's wallet was found amongst the wreckage. And in fact, wow, the authorities spent some time looking for Tommy's body because, they assumed he was there. And it's this perfect time capsule of the Buddy wreck. And one of the last things that if you really pay attention to it, there's a piece of paper in there. It's a Western Union receipt of Tommy wiring his wife $50 from Prairie du Chien, Wisconsin, the day before, really the day of the plane crash. The plane crashed at like 1 or 2 in the morning, so it's technically it was the day before, but really it was the day of. And if you look on a map where Prairie du Chien is, they were heading to Clear Lake, Iowa, heading to that last gig. And almost certainly the last piece they put in there. There's also a receipt where he bought a Fender Bassman amp for the tour for $70. And if you know anything about a 1958-59 Fender Bassman amp, you ain't getting them for $70 these days. More like 10 grand.
Yeah, right.
I looked at that. Oh, man. But just an amazing piece of history. And Tommy himself, Hard Rock doesn't own it, but Tommy himself had taken the 50 cent piece that he flipped with Richie and had it made into a belt buckle, which to me would be, oh boy, would I love to see that. But there's tons of stuff like that. And, the whole collectible world is really strange because, if you think about what Hard Rock was doing when they started collecting in the late 70s, early 80s, they kind of created the entire market. There wasn't really the idea of rock and roll pieces as like museum level artifacts wasn't even a thing until Hard Rock sort of created it. And, now you have incredibly deep pocketed boomers who, money is no object for acquiring some of these things. And it's really odd because, you think of a huge corporation like Hard Rock must have, we can go after this, we can go after that. But even companies have been priced out of the market for these collectibles. You get a guy like Bruce Irsay, the guy who owns the Indianapolis Colts, or I think he still does.
Robert Irsay.
Robert Irsay.
Right.
I always get him confused with a Bruce who owns a team. I don't know why. Robert Irsay. And when a really top level guitar comes to auction, there's not really ever a question of who's going to buy it. It's just, well, he's obviously going to buy it and he'll pay millions and millions of dollars for it. And, who can compete with that? Or you get these kind of retired masters of the universe who, I must own the handwritten lyrics to Let It Be that I can put in my man cave so my other masters of the universe buddies could come and sip single malt and smoke Cubans and talk about how awesome we are, and nobody ever gets to see it again. It's a really odd group, which has made another kind of weird wrinkle in the thing is those things became so valuable that there's a whole cottage industry of fakes. Now, when Hard Rock started collecting, there was no reason to fake this stuff because it wasn't particularly valuable. And now it's, just the due diligence that has to be done on a piece, particularly a high dollar significant historical piece, is intense. And there's it changed the industry. It really, really did. Plus, people that with the advent of like eBay and shows like American Pickers and Pawn Stars, everybody thinks they have some piece of rock history in their attic that's going to put their kids through college. And it's like, no, your torn ticket stub from The Who in 1983 is not going to, pay for a semester. I promise you.
Yeah, that's really, as you're kind of like saying this stuff, I have to think, it's like when you actually look at the context of history and how close we are to, when music was really able to be recorded and the technology was available, you have to think like in hundreds of years from now, how valuable this stuff is going to be, because it's like we're kind of really close to that beginning point in a sense.
It's strange, Chase, because we have what you said is absolutely accurate, but also the artifacts of today's music are not tangible. So, what are you going to do? Print out Billie Eilish's emails? And, it's just not the same. And musically, so much is created in the digital realm that, none of this even exists physically by and large. And I think that with the rise of like NFTs and things, people like just the fact that NFTs exist tells you a lot about human nature and people's desire to collect and possess, because what do you even have with that? You don't have something. Though, of course, right there, I'm being that's old guard thinking, just with what I said right there, that you don't have something if you have an NFT. Somebody savvier and younger than I could certainly argue eloquently against me on that. But I just find it interesting because, what are the totems of today that will be, historically significant in 50, 100 years? I don't know.
Yeah, very much. And
we had Davy J on last month and went deep into the NFT world, and it was very interesting to see where that's all headed at this point. When I was living in London for a short period of time in early 1972, and we used to go to the very first Hard Rock Cafe in London for their burgers, because I was with Stephen Stills and Manassas, and it was a bunch of cowboys and Southern boys, and you couldn't get a burger that time in London except for a Wimpy, and none of us really enjoyed boiled burgers. So
that's why they opened it.
Exactly. And it definitely was the hot spot. You saw all the musicians. I mean, we used to hang there and we'd see Jeff Beck. Alvin Lee was in there all the time. It was just an incredible time to be in London.
Their whole collection started because Clapton just gave Isaac Tigert a guitar for no reason. And Isaac was like, I don't know what to do with this. And he said, put it on the wall. And 3 days later, Pete Townsend sent a roadie over with a Les Paul. And with a note that read, mine's as good as his any day, put it up on the wall. And then it was just like, it just snowballed from there. They never set out to do that.
Yeah, and now are they in Dubai?
Yeah.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. Oh, they're everywhere. Well, I program music for them, for the cafe system globally.
Oh, okay.
And which is a really interesting part of my sort of thing right now. And the regionalizing it is interesting because, I've been able to take baby bands, because I try to program a lot of baby bands. And if something will work in that environment, I'll snatch it up no matter whether it's popular or not. And to be able to tell somebody that, your music's going to be playing in Kazakhstan 5 times a day for the next couple months is pretty cool. It's a good feeling. And then to literally do that is
that's great. Well, when you say baby bands, you want to give us an example of some of those?
Well, I mean, I like to look for things that are hyper contemporary, but still have a rock element. And when I say rock element, I don't mean it has to be guitar-based drums like what we think. It just has to have a driving up-tempo feel to it, even if it's created completely synthetically. That as long as it has that sort of air of a little bit of aggression or rebellion, a little bit of recklessness, then I'm going to gravitate towards it for the cafes all the time. A couple years back, I went nuts with a band called Plague Vendor on Epitaph, who are just extraordinary. And I just put a band called the Shanghai Lows into rotation. And I picked that up through like Little Steven and the Renegade Crew. A lot of times I'll work with them and see what they're working on. And because Steven is a real champion for contemporary rock music, a real champion for it. And he and I will, and his team, I'm kind of like, all right, what should I look at? And, he sent me this thing from this artist called Susie Chunk and a band called Groovy Uncle. And it's a band out of London that is so good. Oh my God, are they good? And every now and then I'll just bump into something too, and say, oh, that would sound perfect for what we're trying to do. It's funny because so much contemporary music right now, or for the last like couple of years, is so mellow. And it's not even that it's good, bad, or indifferent. It's just down tempo, whispery kind of vocal. It has been really kind of hot for a while. It's starting to change, but in the context of music for a business in public, it doesn't really work. It doesn't, no matter how popular the artist may be. I struggled getting Billie Eilish in rotations, and I really like her. But I would struggle finding tracks that were workable because they were just so mellow. You would, if in a high energy environment, you would feel like you turned the sound system off for 3.5 minutes,
Right. And people wouldn't chew fast enough to sell.
Or just not be having fun because everything's so dour, Yeah.
Well, we thought that was over with the emo passing phase, but
emo's making a little comeback. It's funny. I'm hearing in contemporary pop music right now, there's a little tiny bubble up of rock and roll textures that are kind of coming back in pop right now. I don't know how long it'll last. It's just sort of trendy at the moment. But you'll hear things like, for example, the new Charlie XCX record has got a song on it that has a full-blown guitar solo on the outro, which is, I haven't heard that in a minute. It's not a particularly great song. It's not a particularly gret solo, but it exists. And, that tells you something. And the less that I hear of overt auto-tune, in contemporary music, the happier I am. I mean, it's still on everything, but it, when certain artists will start to let the emotion of their voice come through again, that's nice, because it was just a few years ago where it was completely erased from pop music. Everything was quantized and pitch corrected into complete robotic feel. And, I had no interest in that personally, but.
Well, and I think Billie Eilish is partially responsible for that step back from auto-tune and as an effect and things, because she had such a pure voice.
Yeah. A couple albums ago, Lady Gaga did it as well, where I think it was on the Joanne album, where her vocals were significantly more raw than contemporary pop. And I was reading some tweets and stuff where really young fans were saying, what's wrong with her voice? It was like they were young enough to where they had never really heard a person singing. They had only heard, a computer augmented version of a person singing. I find things like that interesting.
Yeah.
I don't just dismiss it out of hand. I think that anything that makes noise and any way to manipulate noise is a valid and exciting way to create music. I'm not a purist in the sense of, I need John Bonham and I need, an acoustic guitar. And it's obviously I love that, but I like to hear really creative electronic producers as well, because it's kind of like what people said about Pink Floyd when they came out, when they went really electronic, around Wish You Were Here, Dark Side of the Moon. There was people going, oh, it's all synthesizers and machines. It's like, well, you go do it then. Right, if it's so easy. Right. Yeah, you go do it.
Well, speaking of electronic instruments, you have a guest appearance on a Blue Oyster Cult's new album. Tell us about that.
I do. I played the theremin on the song Fight on the most recent Blue Oyster Cult record called The Symbol Remains. And it is one of the craziest things that ever came, down the road for me. And I'm very, very proud of it. And when I heard the final mix, I was kind of jaw dropped because the theremin's quite prominent. But I've been friends with Buck Dharma from Blue Oyster Cult for quite a while. We're actually really close. We hang out. When he's in town, he comes over. He and his lovely wife, Sandy, and me and my wife, Erin, have vacation together and stuff. So when they were doing the album, he called me up and said, hey, you want to play theremin on this one song I got? I was like, well, yeah, of course I do. Because it had been a joke between us for a few years when, we'd be talking on the phone. What are you doing tonight? Oh, we're playing it, such and such. I'm like, well, what? Did you give me a couple lines of DI for my theremin on stage? Because I was going to come in and, we would have these jokes about it. And finally, he asked me to do it, and I did it, and it turned out great. I teased him about it and said, "Hey, I'm the only person you know who owns a theremin, correct?" And he's like, "Yeah, well, I still wanted you on the album, though." But what really made my day with the record, because I'm a massive Blue Oyster Cult fan. I feel that their first 3 albums are among the greatest rock records ever made, and their third album, Secret Treaties, is my Desert Island Holy Grail rock album. It is an incredible achievement, and it's subversive and weird, and all of this is pre Don't Fear the Reaper, so they weren't big yet. And they had more in common with like the Velvet Underground or the Grateful Dead than they did with any kind of like metal. You know, they were very freaky and psychedelic. And I can't recommend that Secret Treaties album enough if anybody's never heard it. Anyway, so I wind up on their album on the liner notes and miscredited. And because there's a song on the album called Florida Man. And it says Jeff Nolan played theremin on Florida Man. I actually played theremin on Fight. But and the fact that it's miscredited makes it even better to me. It's like, you know, more of a story.
Well, and what's more apropos than Florida Man?
Totally. And I know how that happened too. I can just see it, a conversation with the record label. And okay, now who played on the theremin? Oh, that's Buck's friend Jeff from Florida. And it just gets, you know, they're like,
oh, been on Florida Man. Let's put him here. Wow.
But, you know, all of these years playing guitar and playing in bands and playing with big artists and perfecting my craft and doing all blah, 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 blah. And I wind up on, you know, a legendary band's album playing the damn theremin, of all things. It's a hard instrument to play well. It's the easiest instrument in the world to play, the hardest instrument in the world to play well.
Yes. Yes, it is. Well,
but it was fun. I'm very proud of it.
Great. Well, Chase, got any more questions for Jeff?
Yeah, real quick. I'm taking it back a second, but I just was curious about the wallet that you mentioned. If someone wanted to go and see that, where exactly is that in the Orlando location?
It's upstairs in an area they have that's called the Roots of Rock Room, which is actually a pretty spectacular room. It's worth going there just to visit because the memorabilia in that cafe is extraordinary. And if you go in there, I mean, there's also a poster in that room that is a hand-painted big marquee poster from the Kaiser Keller in Hamburg. And it's one of only, I think, 2 in existence. And it's the Beatles in like 61 opening for Rory, Storm, and the Hurricanes. And the Beatles back then, of course, Pete Best was their drummer. But the drummer for Rory Storm was Ringo Starr. So it's the Beatles opening for Ringo's band. It blows my mind.
The irony.
Yeah, and it's like it's right in the same area as that wallet. So, I mean, that's worth going there just to see those 2 pieces.
Very cool. I mean, I have plans to go there pretty soon, so you know I'm going to check it out.
Oh yeah, man! You should get one of them to give you a memorabilia tour. They do that, and they'll take you into the like secret areas and stuff. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, definitely.
Cool.
Very good. You got any current projects? Any records coming out?
Well, you know, I'm working on an album with my trio, the Ludes, and I'm really excited about it because, you know, for the first time ever, I'm really doing it all top to bottom myself from a production standpoint. I really enjoy production. I always have. And I find it a creative act in and of itself. And then I work with my buddy Chris J, who's a very well regarded mix and mastering engineer, very talented guy. So I'll bring Chris in towards the end of the project to kind of come in and tell me where I screwed up my mix and to master the project. And continuing to do some work with Dave Aberzees and been playing a lot of live gigs with the Big Jeff Special, Jeff Schumard's band. which is kind of like this cowpunk revved up sort of rockabilly upright bass sort of scenario. I've been having an absolute blast because he's a fantastic songwriter and frontman, and the band's just super fun to be in. So you just keep doing it. It's and you know this, Bruce, we don't do this kind of thing, play in bands, make records, because we expect something at the end of the day with it. It's the journey is the goal. It's who we are. I'm going to play in a rock and roll band until I am physically incapable of doing it.
Well, that's, a lot of my friends have done that, and some of them are still doing it. And in fact, when Richard joins us, we're going to be talking about some of those people. Richard was a childhood friend of Don Henley's. Grew up together in East Texas, and Richard bills himself as the most famous unknown entertainer in America.
That's not a bad thing to be.
And he definitely is that. Well, welcome Richard Bowden to the Reel to Reel podcast.
Hello.
Good morning.
Now, you're in Florida, right?
Yes, sir.
All right.
All of us, and we're in several different locations.
Yeah. Well, I didn't see your walker or anything.
Ouch. Ouch. Going to be that kind of day, is it?
What's going on here?
Well, I recently told Jeff that you're America's greatest unknown entertainer.
That's correct. Absolutely.
And we go back a ways. And
we do.
And you go back even further with people I know.
Yeah.
My friend Al Perkins was in a band with you.
That's right.
With Don Henley called Shiloh.
That's correct. Yes. We were on the verge to stardom. And then we had to get rid of a manager and fake a breakup. And during that breakup, Don Henley and I and my cousin Mike Bowden all got on with Linda Ronstadt. The other guy in that band was Glenn Fry. And we went out and started touring, and then all of a sudden somebody got this harebrained idea about a group called the Eagles, which we didn't think anything to it. But no, seriously, we were privy to a lot of the demos that the Eagles were cutting, and we were, after Don and Glenn left Linda, and we got Mickey McGee and Ed Black from Goose Creek Symphony in the band, and we would listen to those Eagles demos and go, man, if this ain't a hit, we just might as well hang it up. And so far, they've had a couple of hits.
Yeah, they have.
Be my shirt.
Yeah, they did have a couple.
Yeah. But anyway, that didn't work out. So we just, I stayed with Linda for about 4 years and really enjoyed that. She was quite instrumental in me getting into the comedy business later on. As you might have heard, Pinkerton Bowden.
Yep. Well, that was after you and I met.
That's right.
With Dan Fogelberg and Fool's Gold.
Yes, that was a lot of fun. I got the call to audition, and I failed the audition, and they got another guy in there, and they called me back and said, well, he didn't quite do it. What was funny, they said, do you sing harmony? And I said, yeah. And they said, what part? I said, well, high parts, middle parts, and low parts. So I had that covered. And I'm the kind of player that, if there's a neat solo on somebody's album, I try to play it just like it is on the album. So I worked up all those solos stuff with Fogelberg. He was a hoot, wasn't he?
He was a character. It was an interesting time.
Yeah, you and I stayed up all night one night making a coloring book for the drummer.
Yep. For his birthday.
I don't know what happened to that thing. It's somewhere in.
Well, I remember we spent a week one night in Delmonico's in New York.
Yeah, exactly.
Doing the coloring book.
Yeah.
And,
but I've been blessed, with a career. I don't know how I managed to pull it off, but it was a lot of fun. Now I don't tour much anymore.
Well, Pinkerton Bowden was a pretty active comedy duo. It's some classic stuff. In fact, you want to go into the Wayback Machine. You have been compared to Homer and Jethro.
Well, that's true. That's sort of a modern day Homer and Jethro. They were a big influence on me when I was a kid. I listened to those records almost daily. And I eventually got to meet Jethro. Of course, Homer was dead, but we were doing a TV show on the old TNN Nashville Network.
Right.
We had worked up a parody to Homeward Bound, and it was like, Homer and Jethro, we wish we were Homer and Jethro. And about that time, unbeknownst to us, I felt somebody walking up behind me and right in the middle of the song, and turned around, and I'll be dang if it wasn't Jethro Burns. And that's one of the few autographs I ever got was I got him, and I got his personal number too.
Wow.
Yeah, that was a hoot. Yeah, we did a lot of TV on the Nashville Network, and we were on Warner Brothers. And when we first got together, they sent us out as opening acts for like Hank Jr. and Crystal Gale and Eddie Rabbit. But we knew that wasn't our niche. And so we got hooked up with this guy that had a string of comedy clubs. And he said, well, we'll put you out in my comedy clubs and see how it goes. And it went for 16 years. So that's pretty good.
Oh, yeah. I remember seeing you and Sandy in Tallahassee at some shows there.
Yeah.
And amazing.
I played with Roger McGuinn for a while, for a couple of years, and we did an album called Roger McGuinn and Band. And when we played St. Petersburg, he was living in the area then, and he and his wife came out to see us. We had a good time, I'll tell you that. That was one of those gigs where you couldn't believe the checks kept clearing. Because we were, we were just being ourselves and being as stupid as we could possibly be. Hey, later on, after I moved back to my hometown in Texas, I put another band together. Actually, two of the guys that were in the McGuinn band were from Linden, Texas also. And we had a band called Moon and the Stars. Moon being our drummer, who was sort of our lead singer. But we recorded some jewels. There was one song we did called What's That Thing on Aaron Neville's Head? And yeah, we got the DJs in Houston were playing that pretty often.
Oh my gosh.
They got a hold of actually a person from Aaron's entourage called him up and said, "We just wanted to let you know Aaron has heard that song and he thought it was funny." I went, "Oh, thank goodness."
Yeah, right. He's a big fella. You don't want him mad at you.
He's got biceps about the size of my thighs. But anyway, that was a hoot. We had to break up because my drummer got COPD.
Oh,
Yeah, and couldn't sing anymore.
wow.
But when I back with Ronstadt, we were playing in Tucson, Arizona, her hometown, and the Circle Star Theater, which had a rotating stage. Well, Linda at the time had not had a hit in a while, and so we didn't have a full house. There was a little clump of people here, and then empty seats as the stage turned, a bunch of empty seats, and then another little clump of people. Well, after about 3 or 4 laps, Linda hollered out to stop the stage and made everybody there get up and come around in front of us. So we have all the audience in front of us instead of just little pockets of them. And but she got so flustered she couldn't remember what the next song was. And she turned around to me. My nickname was Balloon. She said, "Hey, Balloon, why don't you come up here and sing a song?" I had played a couple of my comedy songs, in the hotel room. And anyway, she pretty much put me on the stop because I didn't have it. It's one thing to do something funny for your close friends. It's another thing to try to be funny to a bunch of strangers. But it worked out, and I did a song that I wrote about when I was a kid looking through the catalogs and being able to order dogs through the mail. And, I couldn't relate to that because we had so many dogs in Linden, Texas, you couldn't give them away. And these dogs where you had to pay $300 or $400 for. Anyway, I did a song called Mail Order Dog, and I'm still using it, and it still works. So I'm in a bluegrass band, and we worked up a version of it. So I'm still kicking.
Well, I remember a couple classic bits in the Fogelberg band.
Yeah.
One, you used to ride a stick horse out on the stage,
Yeah.
and he'd kick your mic stand, and you'd go tie him up to your amp and get off, dismount, and head up and pick up your guitar.
Yeah. Yeah, that was fun too. That was a lot of fun. Yeah,
And
I think
then,
it was a really off the wall parody of Big Bad John,
right.
where I used the same words over and over.
Yeah, that was my favorite.
Yeah, I enjoyed that one too. I still do.
Richard, there's a I don't know if you're familiar with Wolfgang's Vault, but it's like a repository of great concert audio from just about anybody you can name, going way back in time. And there is a show on there from '72 of with you and Linda, and it has you doing Mail Order Dog on it.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it does.
I've never even heard of it. What is it called?
Wolfgang's. Well, I'll send it to you. I'll email you a link.
Okay, great.
Yeah, it was owned by Bill Graham's estate, and then they wound up selling it to somebody, probably BMG or Sony.
Yeah,
but
well, Bruce,
a lot of collections of his stuff.
You're looking good.
I'm feeling good.
Well, good, yeah.
I'm feeling good. One of the other things I want to talk about now, I understand you're going to play us a couple songs here.
Well, actually, I don't think I'm capable of doing that right now.
Okay, well then let's not.
We can still jaw for a while.
Well, definitely. one of the things I want to talk about is your current, I guess, income generator, the Bowden B Bender.
Yes. After the Ronstadt gig, I got again a gig with Roger McGuinn from the Byrds. He had finally stopped calling the band the Byrds and was doing a solo album. And when I got with him, after the first day of rehearsal, he said, "Hey, man, can you do those Bender licks like Clarence White?" Because, Clarence had been tragically killed in a car accident. And I said, "Well, I can't tonight, but I will be able to tomorrow." And so I went home, got out in the shop, and I came up with my own device to bend the strings. And so I started learning how to do those Clarence White licks. And then later on, I believe it was 1990, I did a deal with Gibson to produce those things. Well, it took them 8 years to get it in production. And they did it with their Epiphone side, which is all those guitars are built in Korea. Well, the Koreans didn't quite understand all the tolerances that it took to make my little device. And so when they all came in, about half of them, or maybe more than half of them, did not work correctly. So and they didn't give me quality control, so there was nothing I could do about it. So when they quit producing them, I bought back. They had about 300 units left. I bought those and started fixing them to where they worked and started selling them on eBay. And it started working out. I started getting calls about it, and then I opened up a website, and it's keeping me real busy, I'll tell you that. It's like I had about 6 orders on the board right now that I've got to make, and I bought a milling machine and sit back in my shop, cutting metal and putting it together. And you can see it on my website. Just go to bowdenbbenders.com, and you can see. And in the meantime, I was able to create about a dozen different models.
Well, Richard, I'm familiar with that B Bender, and I didn't realize you were the one. It was yours. I didn't realize you had developed it.
Yeah.
Hey, when you first started making those, like when you were just designing it and conceiving it for yourself,
right?
How did you make it come into existence? I mean, did you just sort of Rube Goldberg it together, or did you have some skills machining stuff? How did that even happen?
Well, I just had envisioned a way to do it, and I got out in the shop, and my first attempt worked just fine. But over the years now, the very first model, I just screwed it to the face of the guitar. But knowing how guitar players in general really don't care too much about drilling holes in their favorite guitar, I came up with an idea of how to attach all of my benders to the tailpiece of the guitar, which required no drilling or no modification to the guitar whatsoever. And I think that was a big selling feature, because they just don't like holes in your guitar. And so after the Gibson thing didn't pan out too well, I just started selling them on my website, and I don't do any advertising. The word has gotten around, and I'm selling them worldwide. I just sent one to Brazil. I've done Japan. Of course, they're probably making their own now. But yeah, all over the world. And it's amazing. I never expected it to, turn into what it has turned into. But I enjoy that kind of work. I'm mechanically inclined. Back in the old days, when we were all broke. I built my own Leslie.
Oh, wow.
For our keyboard player. And what we would do, I played bass at the time, and I bought a dual Showman amp, and then I made 3 more cabinets, homemade, but they looked exactly like the Fender. There you are. And I had 8 JBL speakers, and I could rattle the wall.
Yeah, I would imagine you could. That's moving a lot of air.
Yeah. But anyway, yeah, my dad was a musician, and he could fix just about anything, and I was sort of his shadow growing up. And I guess I just inherited the mechanically inclined part of his brain, I guess.
You're like Merle Travis. Wasn't he like a big tinkerer, messing with watches and devices and all that?
Yeah, I do. I still do a lot of tinkering.
Now, do you have a patent on the bee bender?
Yes, I do. Of course, I think it's expired by now, but I found out in a hurry that it doesn't matter if you have a patent or not. People will knock you off, and unless you got a lot of money to spend.
Right.
Then you're SOL.
Mm-hmm. But, I know you definitely are artistically inclined, because you were always on the road drawing, and that was the comic book we talked about. You did some great characters in that.
Yeah, I was amazing how accurate my little caricatures were. Must have been the drugs.
Yep.
But boy, we had a good time. You remember me when Fools Go, we went out opening for Loggins and Messina on their farewell tour.
Mm-hmm.
I knew that their last song was Your Mama Don't Dance and Your Daddy Don't Rock and Roll. And they segued into Splish Splash, I Was Taking a Bath. And then they got back into Your Mama Don't Dance, and that was their final song. Well, this last gig, there was a ramp onto the stage. So I waited till I knew that they were fixing to do Splish Splash, and I came running out on the stage and nothing but shaving cream. And I did have some underwear on. But other than that, I was completely naked. And I did a go-go dance during the Splish Splash. I think it made Jim Messina mad, but
you think?
Loggins was laughing his tail off.
Well, that's Shaving Cream Man has been a famous Richard Bowden alter ego for years and years. And I believe I witnessed him one night in Rochester on the Folkberg tour.
Can you hang on just a second?
Certainly.
I'm going to go off the camera here for just a second.
Who knows what he's going to bring back?
Yeah.
Can you see this?
Yeah, we can.
Yeah.
Just barely, but.
Oh, yeah.
It's Richard with shaving cream on his face. And
he looks like Michael Myers from the
belly
Halloween films.
Yeah. Well, if you'll notice, so Richard, the rest of the band, we're sitting in the lobby of this Holiday Inn playing poker. And I glance up and I see Richard walking off the elevator. He's got on his cowboy boots with his silver toe.
Yeah.
Nothing else. Shaving cream everywhere on his body that he has hair. And in one hand, he's holding a razor. He goes walking up to the woman behind the counter, and she's about having a heart attack.
Yeah.
And he says, "You know where a fella could get some blades?" And I mean, we were on the floor laughing.
Oh, I know that story made it through the whole music industry. So I'm known for being a wild man rather than a great guitarist. Anyway, I've been blessed, I'll tell you that, with my career after the McGuinn thing, and got into the comedy, and that lasted for 16 years, and we had a great time. Once we got into the comedy clubs, instead of opening for Crystal Gale, things went a lot better. But it came a point where all good things must come to an end, and I wanted to move back home and look after my mom. She was widowed by then. My dad had died, and she needed somebody around to kind of look after her. So I moved on back and gave up the business as such as we know it, with major labels and stuff. And
you did.
Wouldn't have traded those last 8 years of her life for anything.
That's it. That is a blessing.
Yeah.
And you, for a while, and I think you're still on the board, ran a theater called Music City, Texas, there in Linden.
Correct. Yes. It was the old American Legion Hall where Henley and I used to play dances every weekend, before we left for the West Coast. And after I moved back, I started hearing rumors of them tearing the building down. Well, it was a perfect venue because it had a nice stage with a proscenium arch, and it had a great little kitchen that was below the stage. So I went to the city. I was actually a city councilman at the time. And I said, y'all, the city owned the building by then. And I said, let's, can you lease that building to us? So I got the building for $10 a year. And we rolled our sleeves up and went out there and made it into a wonderful venue. Henley's played there twice. Jackson Brown's played there 3 or 4 times. And it's only a 400-seater. And, we got the Bellamy Brothers already scheduled for Christmas show in December. And Vince Gill came a couple of years ago, before the COVID idiot stuff. Him and Tony Arata, who wrote the dance for Garth Brooks, and another songwriter friend of Vince's, the 3 of them came down and did a show, just like songwriter in a round show for us, and it was wonderful. Of course, with Vince's name attached to it, it sold out. We probably could have sold 5,000 tickets rather than 400, but we just split the money 5 ways. And it worked out great. He said he would do it again, too. Vince is a sweetheart. He really is.
An amazing talent, too.
I'd already had that booked when he called to tell me that he had just gotten a gig with the Eagles. And he didn't even have to tell me that because I'd heard it like 2 days before that. And we talked, and I said, yeah, I know what you're going to say. So... So maybe we can do it some other time. And he said, yeah. He said, I've been waiting for that gig for 60 years. When I went to see them for the first time with Deacon, Glenn's boy, and Vince, I went, wow, this works. Yes. Have you seen them lately?
I just saw them in February on
Oh,
the
yeah.
hotel tour. You know, that album means a lot to me. So I
Yeah.
had to see that.
Absolutely.
And whooey, I was impressed. They had the symphony and the choir and just the presentation of the show, you know, having the guy come out with
Right.
the record under his arm and put it on the turntable.
Yeah.
I thought, you know,
That
I could
was
see
pretty
Henley's hand all over that.
yeah. Yeah. I hadn't seen, I've heard about that, but I haven't seen that yet. But I'll probably try to see them when they get a little closer to Texas.
Well, you know, I don't know if you remember, but Carol, my wife and I came down to your, I believe, 60th birthday party there at Music City, Texas.
Right. Yeah.
And Al Perkins had driven in from
Yeah.
Nashville,
Right.
and I saw Don there that night too.
Yeah. We had
Joel Saunier was playing that night or that weekend.
Yeah, probably so. Sounds like it. And
It's an amazing party.
Don and I, we judged the deviled egg contest.
So Chase, you got any questions for Richard?
Yeah. So, kind of maybe a little bit more of a like just personal question. You know, I was looking into, you know, your history, and one of the things that stood out to me, I'd read that you, it seems like from what I was able to gather that you got started in music because your dad had a band and you started playing with his band. Is that accurate?
Yes, that is, as a matter of fact.
So,
Yeah, some of his buddies, they would gather up, you know, once every couple of months and come to the house and just jam. And I played trombone in the high school band. So when I got good enough, I started joining in with them. And they did sort of Dixieland type stuff. And we had this guy who was a year older than me playing drums, and he graduated and went to college. And that's when I got Don to come join with us and learn how to play drums and stuff. We used to have to break in the band hall every weekend and borrow the drums, and then we'd take them back before school started Monday. But after everybody could see that we were serious about our music, well, Don's parents finally bought him a set of drums, so we didn't have to break into band hall anymore. But yeah, that was a lot of fun, and then we phased out the older generation finally and started doing current rock and roll. We had a trumpet player that was a state champion kind of guy, and he also played the Vox Continental organ with one hand and played trumpet with the other, so we could do all those soul songs and sound like the record. And unfortunately, he was killed in a motorcycle accident, and that's when we added Al Perkins, and we changed our name to Shiloh. Before that, we were called Felicity. After Al joined the band, we needed a keyboard player, and Don had met Jim Ed Norman, who ended up being the head of Warner Brothers Nashville for many years. He's from Florida, actually, St. Petersburg. And he got in the band. He was going to school at North Texas State University, and that's where Don met him. And we got him in the band, and that's when we became Shiloh and decided to go to the West Coast and get rich and famous. And so Don got rich, I just got famous.
Yeah, that was something I was interested in, just because like I'm a musician as well, and you know, I started getting interested in music when I was in elementary school, but you know, nobody in my family, including, you know, my parents or my dad, like nobody had any musical background, and so anytime I see like someone kind of got into it because, you know, their dad was in a band or something, it's very interesting to me to hear like how that kind of evolved.
Yeah.
just because like my parents didn't quite know what to do when I was like, I want to, join the school band when I was in 4th grade. And actually, it's funny. I also I played trombone. That was my instrument that I first started playing.
Cool. Yeah, that's a good instrument.
Well, didn't you do an Eagle tour where you played the Hotel California solos on the trombone?
That's right. That was
I'd love to
wild.
hear that.
Yeah, that's probably on YouTube somewhere.
Yeah, it probably is. I'll have to look it up. We did a A&E TV special in Dallas where me and the keyboard player that he had hired was a trombonist also. That's how that all got started. He was still hiring his musicians for the tour. And I had gone out to do the guitar tech stuff. And he came in one day, he said, we probably ought to do some, dueling trombones or something,
So Richard, were you playing the Felder licks or the Joe Walsh licks?
No, we were playing the Felder licks. Well, we played both. We played the entire solo with trombones. And, during the rest of the song, we were doing a pa. And they kind of did it was sort of a reggae ska version of it. But man, it went over big time. Don had got us we had these little black pillbox hats like Louis Farrakhan wears. And he had us in tuxes with dark sunglasses, and we'd come marching out on stage with our trombones and stand right behind him and do the pa-pas. And it came solo times, and it was. We did it note for note, except the range was so high we had to jump an octave here. But it was fun. That was I'll have to look, see. I bet that is on YouTube.
Yeah, well, especially if it was on the A&E special. I think that maybe is where I saw it, was the A&E special.
Anyway, Don came to me and said, "You think you can pull that off?" I said, "Well, I can try," because I hadn't picked my horn up in like 30 years. So first I had to get some lip back, and then I had to learn the entire solo on guitar, both parts, so I could transfer it in my brain to. I don't read music anymore, so I just had to transfer that to my brain and make it work on the trombone. But it did, and it was great. It was fun. We brought the house down every night. Go check out my Bowden B-Benders website, because any publicity I can get for that.
Well, we'll make sure that it gets mentioned and tagged, and
yeah, I'm pulling it up right now.
Yeah,
they're really cool. I've seen them.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. The thing that I think most guitar players love about them is that you don't have to drill holes. That was
right. Yeah,
that was a brilliant innovation, and
non-defacing to your guitar.
Yep.
Yeah, that makes a lot of difference.
Well, I'm out of questions. Anybody else got any more questions for Richard or Jeff?
This was fun, Bruce.
Yes, it certainly was. So I'm gonna sign off. And Richard, thanks a million, brother.
Hey, man, it's
good seeing your smiling face.
Yeah, it's great to see you again and talk. And anytime you want to do something else, well, just let me know.
You betcha. Well, you'll probably be hearing from me sometime soon. All right. Well, thank you for joining us on the Reel to Reel podcast from the Melrose Center. I'm your host, Bruce Hensal, joined by my co-host, Chase Steele. We'd like to thank our guests, Jeff Nolan and Richard Bowden. And we'll have so much more in store coming up on future episodes. Make sure to like us and subscribe on YouTube, your favorite podcasting app. And And join us next month for another exclusive look behind the board in the music industry. And thanks to Carol Hensal for our theme music.
Yeah, say hi, Carol.
I will do that, Richard.
All righty.
Orange County Library System's Melrose Center is now open. Come rediscover all we have to offer. Innovate in our Fab Lab. Create in our editing bays and sound booths. Experience our simulators. Produce, capture, and direct in our audio,
This is the rap.
photo, and video studios. Plan your visit now at ocls.info/Melrose or call 407-835-7323.